Occultae Veritatis.
Hello, OVpod cult members. This is Ood Gallifrey, and I owe you an explanation. I've told you from the start of the Occultae Veritatis podcast that this is a podcast produced by regular people. We all have day jobs. Many of us have children. All of us have responsibilities. And all of us have various mental illnesses, life stresses, complications, all that good stuff. And early in 2023, several things in our lives changed, especially mine. Number one, I got a new job in an industry that's very important to me. Now, throughout the 6 years that OVpod's been on the air, I've gotten a few new jobs, but a lot of them have been physically taxing, rather than my current one, which is more mentally taxing. And here's the distinction. When I've had physically taxing jobs in the past, like when I worked in a meat production plant and things like that, after I was done my shift, my body was cooked, but my mind was still fairly fresh. I didn't, stress mentally much of the day. My body was tired, but I was just listening to podcasts and audiobooks all day, so I was good. So I had the mental energy to just pound through editing, and that's why I was able to release on a more weekly schedule back then. But my past couple jobs, including my current job, is more mentally taxing, so after a full day of work, I may not be mentally awake enough to go through that big editing process. Number two, I'm gaining new insights into what's happening inside of my head. Some very learned people in my life have told me that I may be autistic and ADHD, which would explain a lot of things in my life, and I'm going through a big bunch of processes to get tested and get those properly addressed, because those things have been hurdles in my work, I feel. Because I don't know really what's going on mentally with me, that I can't really give myself the tools to adjust. So I'm going through those processes so I can more readily focus on the podcast. As you all know, I'm the chief editor of Occultae Veritatis podcast. After an episode is done being recorded, a typical hour-long episode takes about 8 to 12 hours of post-production to be fully completed. I could speed up the process and make a worse product, but I'm sort of very stubborn. I'm not a perfectionist about very many things, but something that is part of my creative works that I know I'm going to have my name behind, I become quite a perfectionist about. Just to give you a glimpse of what that 8 to 12 hours looks like, the podcast is recorded in separate tracks, just so everybody's voice sounds better, but there is bleed over for that track, so that's other people's voices appearing on other microphone tracks, and when you play them together, even if the timings are perfect, there's a weird tin can echoey effect. So I have to delete everybody else's voices from all of the tracks. That takes a couple hours. Then I have to master all the voices, so I have to make all the voices sound good. Bring up the quiet ones, add bass, take away sounds. When people are inconsistent, like they move their heads away from the mics, I have to make sure that their voices sound the same level, whether they're close to the mic or not. That takes a couple hours. After I'm done mastering all the voices, I then go through a listen to see for interruptions. So whenever a bunch of people talk at once, I make sure that the most important person or the most relevant person is heard. Sometimes people talk all at once and it still works, because that's how group discussions interact. So I have to sift through that and see which interruptions work and which interruptions need to be silenced so that the most important person is heard. I then go through the main editing where I construct the episode. That's arguably the longest process. I stress about every every breath, all that stuff. During this process, I also fact check. So if I hear anything that sets off my pingers that it might be incorrect or might put us in a bad light, or a point in the episode is hanging on that opinion, I'll try and fact check it, and sometimes that takes a long time. The clips that I like to include clips where people are talking from the horse's mouth. So if somebody says experts say, I try and put a clip of an expert actually saying it, but sometimes looking for those clips is an effort all in and of itself. So that takes a few hours. Then I go through a final editing adjustment where I make everything the same volume and sound the same and all that, because sometimes in the bulk of the editing and the process before things get mixed up. So yeah, that's why it takes 8 to 12 hours. So, full disclosure, a while back, I committed to a 3-episode-a-month schedule. And because I didn't really adjust how I did things at all, I couldn't really keep up to it even though we were releasing one less episode a month. I've made the same mistake I've made a lot of times in my life, where my ambition outweighed my ability to actually adjust, plan, and execute. I want to release 3 episodes a month on time, but because I didn't adjust anything and I just relied on pure willpower to push through, I was late on many episodes, and some months I only released 2, and as you all have seen, in November and December, after that full month of episodes from October, I was burnt out. I pushed too hard, I didn't adjust anything, and I got burnt out on editing OVpod episodes. So this time around, in 2024, I'm actually going to make some changes. I'm not just going to rely on willpower. I'm going to make some concrete changes in the way I produce things so I can actually meet deadlines, and I don't have to leave our lovely patrons who pay the bills and our fans waiting for new episodes hanging. Number 1, I've been using this time off to batch edit episodes at my own pace. That way, I now have a couple months of buffer room where I don't have to edit episodes the day before they're released. I actually have episodes ready to go. Number 2, I'm talking with industry professionals, other editors, other podcasters, other podcast producers, to see what shortcuts in my work I could make, what changes in my process I could do to reduce the amount of time in post-production, to make things easier on myself. I'm also actively seeking mental health supports, so perhaps I can get tools or medication to deal with my mental health needs so that I can be more readily available and have the energy to edit episodes. I just want to thank the rest of the OVpod team for being patient with me. I am the linchpin of the podcast. I am the editor, so things don't get out if I don't do my job, and I haven't been doing my job, so things have not been getting out. So I would like to thank them for being patient and gracious with me, as well as the fans and the patrons. Thank you for sticking around, even though we've been inconsistent as hell lately. But at this point, after some adjustments have already been made, and after I'm seeking into a few things, I think I'm ready to set out a new plan for OVpod in 2024. Number 1, OVpod will return with new episodes 3 times a month, starting on the 6th of January 2024, and episodes will be releasing on the 6th, 16th, and 26th of each month, not counting specials like the Halloween special, etc. For our patrons, we're going to continue doing the Patreon polls. And thanks to a little help from a resurrected body from our resident radio demon, our bi-monthly polls will now turn into monthly polls on Patreon. So every single month you'll be able to vote on what episodes are coming up next. And because it's moving to monthly, patrons will now be determining a third of all episodes that make it onto OVpod. And the turnaround time for those episodes is not going to be half a year. We're going to try and make it a month or 2, from those episodes being voted in to showing up on the feed. The Sauce Boss Spicy Challenges are coming back to the Patreon, so you get to enjoy me, Leon, and company suffer from hot sauces as part of your Patreon bonus. I had ambitions to continue with the Cultiers only episodes, but I don't think I'll be able to produce bonus content every month, so I'm not going to promise it in the new year. But patrons that sign up are still going to be able to vote in a third of the episodes OVpod creates. You're still going to get our Sauce Boss challenges. You'll get bonus content whenever we can make it. I'm not going to promise monthly, but whenever we can put it out. You'll still get episodes a week earlier than the public feed. When OVpod comes back on January the 6th, patrons will receive episodes from the 6th and from January 16th on the public feed. Then on the 16th, you'll be receiving the episode from the 26th on the public feed, and so on. And you'll still be welcomed into the private quarters of our Patreon-only Discord. And for OVpod in general, we still have lots of fun stuff that we have planned. Like, we have lots of ideas for stuff we want to do, but it's all about actually setting things up and planning for them to happen. That's where the magic happens. It's easy to come up with an idea, it's harder to follow through. But I think with the adjustments we're making, as well as some new reinvigoration, I think we'll be able to complete some projects. And some of them are already half done. For example, sometime in 2024, you should enjoy a 4-part deep dive into the entire history of Scientology from me and Sage Murray. Additionally, OVpod is partnering with a local organization to produce sexual education episodes. Sex ed for adults. And that should be showing up sometime next year as well. Of course, we're going to continue with our yearly specials. We'll be having an April Fool's special, a Halloween special, a Christmas special, and in June, we're starting a brand new yearly tradition. For those that don't know, June is National Indigenous History Month. And every June, we are going to release an episode, hopefully with Indigenous people providing their own stories and commentary on a subject about Indigenous history and Indigenous people. The podcast is, after all, produced in Canada. Canada was born in a legacy of genocide and blood. And we're going to talk about those parts of Indigenous history, but our June specials are also going to be attempting to not only look at the darkness, but celebrate the culture of Indigenous people as well. And we're going to try and invite Indigenous people on to talk about some of their culture and practices, as well as talking about the dark history of Canada's interaction with Indigenous people. So that's what our June specials are inclined to be. So to summarize the past 10 minutes of me talking, we at OVpod are sorry about our inconsistency of the past year or two. Our ambitions outweighed our ability to actually make those ambitions happen. But with a renewed sense of vigor and an actual realistic look at solving problems that get in the way of proper and timely podcast production, we hope to come out on time 3 times a month, starting on the 6th of January 2024. Although sometimes me and the other hosts sometimes get burnt out producing episodes every month, I can still say that we're all excited and invigorated to continue this project. As much as I complain about the workload, I love it. It's my creative outlet. And writing episodes every month forces me to learn things that I didn't know before. I feel like it keeps my brain healthy. I feel like it keeps my mind moving. It keeps me learning and discovering and wondering. I love it. And I'm nowhere close to running out of steam on OVpod. So, I'll sign off for now. I've been Ood Gallifrey. I will see all of you on the 6th of January 2024 for some new OVpod and a new year of brilliance. Ta-ta for now.